Grab your drinks and have a seat. It's time for serial killers.
Hello.
Hello.
We're here.
Kind of. We are here, but we're not in our space.
Yeah. I mean, we're in this
gonna
space
be
for a hot while.
Yeah. It's going to be a while.
So I'm T.
And I'm Jay.
And we are here to tell you, if you don't know already, we are here to tell you about serial killers.
Right.
And the way that we start these things out normally, and I don't want to take a long time on the intros because this is not going to be a long one necessarily, but guess how many pages of research I have?
8.
No.
How many?
10.
And I'm out.
Actually 9 because the 10th page is the references.
Well, then let's talk about what we're drinking and get right into it.
So today I am drinking a large iced tea from Starbucks because that's just, we had to leave the house because somebody's going to come look at it. So we grabbed a tea and headed over here.
Grab the tea to spill the tea.
We're not spilling tea, but okay.
And speaking of tea, that's what I'm drinking too. But mine tastes better because it has sugar in it.
It actually has
Whatever they're...
classic syrup.
Yeah.
Yeah. We both have tea today,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of a coincidence because the person we're talking about today, their name starts with a T.
Ooh.
And this person, I'm going to say it like this. This person, in my honest opinion, I do not classify as a serial killer.
Interesting.
But they are, by definition, a serial killer. And they were in my serial killer book. So I decided I'll just do it. But
that walks like a duck, talks like a duck. It must be a duck.
I don't know. I struggle with this one. So at the end of this one, you guys will have to say whether you feel he's a serial killer or not. So today we are talking about a man named Theodore Kaczynski.
Ted Kaczynski.
That's who we're talking about.
Pew, pew, pew.
So we are talking about Ted Kaczynski. His nickname is the Unabomber.
The Unabomber.
Yeah, he has 3 victims. The murder dates are 1985, 1994, and 1995, which is why he is, by definition, a serial killer.
Yep.
However, I'm going to point this out right now. There are not, if you're going to go strictly by definition, yes, he's a serial killer, but it's really hard to paint him as a serial killer because his killings were political. Serial killers don't tend to kill for political reasons, for one, and for two, I actually don't know if he meant to kill anybody. Like, I don't think he meant, I don't know. I can't speak on it because he never actually said whether or not he meant to kill them, but you'll find out why more. But yeah, I struggle with him being labeled a serial killer, but here we are. His location of murders were California and New Jersey. And his method of murder was explosive devices. And the characteristics of his murder is domestic terrorism and mail bombs. Again, just very not what you would normally hear from a serial killer. So Ted was born May 22nd, 1942 in Chicago. His parents were Theodore and Wanda. Now, his father was a sausage maker and his mother she worked also. And they were both Polish. And he does have one younger brother. Now, from the grades of 1st to 4th grade, Ted went to Sherman Elementary School in Chicago, and he was described as being healthy and well-adjusted by pretty much all the teachers, principals, all that stuff. Now, in 1952, the family moves to Evergreen Park, Illinois. Now, at this time, Ted moves to Evergreen Park Central Junior High. While there, he ends up somehow taking an IQ test, and he scores a 167.
Which is pretty high.
Well, considering an average score is typically between 85 to 115. So he scores a 167. And so after they see this, they're like, okay, well, he can just like skip a grade. So they completely have him skip 6th grade. Ted then goes on as time goes on, and he attends Evergreen Park Community High School. And again, while he's there, he excels, especially in math. He also plays the trombone. He's a member of the marching band. He was also a member of numerous clubs like the Mathematics Club, the Biology Club, the Coin Club, and the German Club. He ends up graduating from high school at the age of 15. And then he is accepted into Harvard at the age of 15. And in 1958, at the age of 16, he actually goes to Harvard on a scholarship. Now, many people who knew him back then said he was not emotionally mature enough to actually head to Harvard. They were a little bit kind of, which I agree, you're 16 years old. Like, how do you, maturity-wise, how do you fit in with 18 to 22-year-old college students? You, like, don't. And so actually his first year there, he had one room that he stayed at. He stayed in a room in a house that was a lot like he was protected there because he was only 16. Then he ends up going on and moving with other people, has roommates and stuff. And even his roommates actually go on to say that he was extremely smart, but completely socially reserved. He didn't have friends. He didn't really hang out with people. I don't even think he knew how to socially cope with being a 16-year-old, 17-year-old, 18-year-old in this environment. He does graduate from Harvard in 1962. He then goes on to obtain a master's degree and a PhD in mathematics. And then he starts a teaching job at a university. However, he really does not feel comfortable with the students. And so he resigns from his position in 1969. In 1971, he moves in with his parents. And while he's living with his parents, he then decides to build a cabin for himself that he's going to live in Montana. This cabin had no running water, no electricity. It literally is just like a building that he was just going to go live in. Now, he makes ends meet by doing odd jobs, and then he actually receives a significant amount of financial support from his family, which I'm sitting there as a parent going, I don't know if I would do that. If our son, who is in college, he just graduated with his AA degree. He's going on to get his bachelor's degree in computer science. If he gets a bachelor's degree in computer science and then tells us he wants a PhD and a master's and all that stuff, and he goes through all that school, and then he chooses to live by himself in Montana with no electricity and no running water and expects us to pay for his life, it ain't happening. Not happening. So I'm not really, good on his parents for wanting to take care of him, but like, I'd be pretty much like, nah, go get a job. Now he begins to study survival skills while he's in this house. This includes things like finding edible plants in the wild, how to track animals. So he's basically essentially learning how to live off grid and being able to rely on only himself to survive, which I'm not dogging on that, because there's actually quite a few people who do that now. And if that's how you want to live your life, like, go for it. Which is what he wanted. I think he kind of just wanted to be away from everybody for whatever reason, whatever his reasoning was, because I don't know. He was one with the earth.
I was going to say, they talk about him being socially awkward.
Yeah.
Not having friends and stuff like that. So what better way to be by yourself than to live off the grid? Right.
His brother actually for a little while also kind of learned the survival stuff. So it was kind of like they all liked it, I guess. But it wasn't, they weren't as serious, I don't think, as Ted was.
They're like, yeah, it was fun to do for a couple of months. And he's like, no, I'm living this way.
Well, over time, as he's learning this stuff, he starts to realize that the way the world was moving, he would eventually not be able to live this life anymore the way he wanted to, meaning that the modernization of the world was going to take away places for him to explore and live. To be fair, he's not wrong, because you think about like all the woods and, you know, how many times have you seen like whole entire acres of forestry leveled to build houses? It happens all the time.
All the time. We were just talking about that as we drive around and we see these little like housing complexes being put up, and we talk about how we'll drive by somewhere and we're like, oh, yeah, give it 5-10 years. That's going to be gone and it's going to be houses. And
you figure this is the 70s that he's figuring this out, because in that time, I'm sure he's seeing things happen. Now, in 1975, Ted starts to sabotage developments that are popping up around the area that his cabin is being built. Like a couple times he would set booby traps, and then there was a little bit of arson mixed in there a little bit. Probably like maybe burning down the facilities. I don't actually know. It didn't go into detail. But in my mind, I'm thinking, well, I'm sure if they started building, maybe he went and lit them on fire so they couldn't build right away.
Or their tools or their tractors or whatever.
Yeah. Now in 1983, all the developments around him start to get it so that he is like, I need a break. There are far too many people in my area, and I need to kind of retreat and refocus and reset myself. These are specifically his words. He said he wanted to go to his like one of his most favorite places where he wanted to just kind of retreat and be back one with the earth. So this is what he says. It's kind of a rolling country, not flat. And when you get to the edge of it, you find these ravines that cut very steeply into cliff-like drop-offs. And there was even a waterfall there. It was about a 2 days hike from my cabin. That was the best spot until the summer of 1983. That summer, there were far too many people around my cabin, so I decided I needed some peace. I went back to the plateau, and when I got there, I found that they had put a road right through the middle of it. You just can't imagine how upset I was. It was from that point on I decided that rather than trying to acquire further wilderness skills, I would work on getting back at the system, revenge. So
Makes
there you
sense.
have it. Now, during his time at the cabin, his father would often come and visit him. And his father was actually really impressed by his son's skills. And he was very impressed by the fact that his son, again, is living in a cabin with no water, no electricity, and kind of thriving. In 1990, Ted's father is diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. And he actually ends up holding a family meeting later that year. Ted was not present at this family meeting. And this family meeting was sort of to tell the family what their future is going to look like once he's no longer there. Then on October 2nd of 1990, Ted's father shoots and kills himself in his home. So between 1978 and 1995, Ted is responsible for building and delivering bombs. This ends up killing 3 and injuring 23, and there were 16 bombs total that he had built and delivered. On May 27th, 1978, at Northwestern University in Illinois, there was a bomb. The bomb did detonate, and it actually injured Terry Marker, who was a university police officer. He ends up having cuts and burns, but he lives. Then on May 9th, 1979, at Northwestern University in Illinois, there was another bomb. Now, this bomb was detonated, and John Harris, a grad student, was injured, but also lived. On November 15th, 1979, American Airlines flight from Chicago to Washington, D.C., there is an explosion that occurred mid-flight. However, it didn't explode. It smoked out. It like lit something on fire, kind of smoked out the cabin. 12 people were injured, but the injuries were considered non-lethal. However, it was stated that had the bomb detonated the way it was supposed to, it would have blown up the whole entire plane. Then on June 10th, 1980, in Lake Forest, there was a bomb that was detonated, and Percy Wood, who was actually the president of United Airlines, was injured. He had severe burns and cuts over most of his body and face. Then on October 8th, 1981, at the University of Utah, there was a bomb found, but it was diffused. So there's a couple that were diffused. Then on May 5th, 1982, at Vanderbilt University, there was a bomb. It was detonated, and Janet Smith, who was a university secretary, is injured by this bomb. She suffers severe cuts and burns, plus shrapnel wounds. Then on July 2nd, 1982, at the University of California, Berkeley, there is another bomb found. It is detonated. Diogenes Angelakos, who was a professor there, was injured and received severe cuts and burns to the hands and face, along with shrapnel wounds. So right now, if you're listening to this, I'm noticing, my thing that I'm noticing, and I noticed this when I did the research, is he went after a lot of college universities. At this point,
he doesn't like
it's all
college.
Universities except for the flight. That's
Right.
the only one that's not a university so far.
And maybe it was because his time spent at the university, maybe he didn't like it very well. because of how young he wasn't treated right. I don't know.
Maybe.
Or maybe that's where all the brainiac people are coming from that are building these roads and developing these areas that he's not happy with.
Well, and technology starts to become a thing in the 80s. And so maybe, it all plays a part, I guess. Then on May 15th, 1985, the University of California, Berkeley, again, can you imagine that? 3 years apart, you find bombs at your school 3 years apart. And they both detonate, by the way, like they detonate. John Hauser, who was a grad student, was injured by this bomb. He lost 4 fingers, severed an artery in his right arm, and he has partial vision loss in his left eye. Then on June 13th, 1985, the Boeing Company in Auburn, Washington, this bomb is found, but it is diffused. So again, now he's going after, colleges and airplanes. Because even the one guy that he the one guy that he injured in Lake Forest was the president of United Airlines. So it's like airlines or colleges. That's all he wanted to go after. It's weird. It is weird. Then on November 15th, 1985 at University of Michigan, James McConnell, who's a psychology professor, is injured by a bomb that detonates. He sustains temporary hearing loss. During that same bomb explosion, Nicholas Sweeney, who was a research assistant, was also injured, and he suffered from burns and shrapnel wounds. Then on December 11th, 1985, in Sacramento, California, there was a bomb. It was detonated. Now, Hugh Scruton, he was at his computer in his computer store when this bomb detonates, and it explodes in a car outside of his computer store. And he is hit with nails and splinters, and he is killed. Then on February 20th, 1987, in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Like when you say splinters, like wood splinters?
They just said splinters. Yeah. I'm assuming shrapnel.
Yeah, I was just curious if it was something he packed in the bomb or if it was from
Well, it says nails and splinters, so right. I have no idea. And I'd like to know, where was that car parked? Because it had to go through.
Right outside.
Yeah, I don't know. That's strange. Then on February 20th, 1987, in Salt Lake City, Utah, there is another bomb that is detonated, and it is similar to the one that just happened in Sacramento. Gary Wright, who is another computer store owner, is injured, and he is left with severe nerve damage to his left arm. So now he's switched from universities and planes to computer people.
Again, technology.
Right. Then on June 22nd, 1993, in Tiburon, California, there is a bomb that is found. It is detonated. I'm sorry, the bomb is not found. There is a bomb there. It is detonated. And Charles Epstein, who was a geneticist there, he actually receives this bomb in the mail. So now he opens his mail. There's a bomb. He doesn't know it's a bomb, obviously. There's a bomb. He takes it out of the mail, and he is severely injured. He has damaging to both of his eardrums, partial hearing loss, and he actually loses 3 fingers from this incident. Then on June 24th, 1993, at Yale University in Connecticut, David Gelernter, he's a computer science professor, he receives a bomb in the mail as well. Now, this bomb does detonate, and he does suffer from severe burns and shrapnel wounds. He also has damage to his right eye and the loss of the use of his right hand. Then on December 10th, 1994, in North Caldwell, New Jersey, a bomb arrives at the home of Thomas Masser. He is an advertising executive at Burson Marsteller, and it arrives at his home. He dies from this bomb. It explodes. Then on April 25th, 1995, in Sacramento, California, Gilbert Murray, who is the president of the California Forestry Association, he is killed when a bomb is delivered to his office by mail. The bomb is actually addressed to William Dennison, but the thing is, William Dennison was the person that Gilbert had recently replaced because William Dennison had retired. Now, the FBI obviously starts to get involved because they're like, what's going on? For the last 20 years, we've been having bombs just over, and there's not a really they're in different areas. They're in different locations. They're different kinds of bombs. They don't really know what's going on, but they have a feeling that they're somehow connected together, but they don't know what it is. So we've got the FBI gets involved, and they are just trying to figure out who is responsible for these bombs. Because again, we're going on almost 20 years. The bombing started, just to refresh your memory, the bombs started in 1978 and we are in 1995. So we're looking at 18 years of bombs. Not bombs, but basically 16 bombs over 18 years. So once a year at the minimum, almost at the minimum, you're looking at, what's going on. And again, they don't even have information to be able to say, hey, you guys need to watch out. Like, they don't
any
know
rhyme or reason of who he's going after.
Right. So now the FBI got involved, though. I'm going to take you back. The FBI actually got involved in 1979 after the first bomb went off. Because I'm assuming that in the world we live in today, if somebody bombed a building, the FBI would be involved. It's not like a police task force thing. So the FBI actually starts their shit in 1979, and they set up what they deemed a Unabomb task force, which is why he is nicknamed the Unabomber, is because it came from they created a Unabomb task force, which I'm almost wondering if it was because it was one bomb that had gone off. And so they were like, oh, we're going to call it the Unabomb. And then all of a sudden, a bunch more are going throughout the years. But then he becomes known as the Unabomber. Now, in 1980, they come out with a profile. And they actually tell people what they think it is, who they think it is. They have this whole profile. But in 1983, they come back and say, no, we don't think it's this guy. We don't think it's this profile. We actually think that this person might be like an airplane mechanic. So they take away all this stuff because they like in their profile, it was like, we think it's a man. We think he's above intelligence, actually probably pretty close to what Ted Kaczynski really was. But they took it all away because of the way that the bombs were being created, which again, were always kind of different. They thought he had, I don't know what made them think, well, now that I say that, let me see something. No, because I was going to say because of the airlines thing, but that happened in 1979 and they changed the profile in 1983. So I don't know what actually made them change the
maybe
profile.
The pieces he was using
maybe
were connected to aircrafts.
Maybe.
Something like that.
Yeah. So they also set up a hotline and they want tips and they're offering, they get to a point where they offer $1 million reward for the fucking 80s and 90s.
It's a lot of money.
So they're offering because they don't have any idea. Now, in 1995, Ted actually sends out to multiple news sources a manifesto. Now, this manifesto is a 35,000 word essay. First of all, I'm going to stop you right there for just a minute. I'm not reading a 35,000 page anything. 35,000 word. I'm not reading a 35,000 word anything, especially if it's a manifesto. I don't care. I do like to read, but I don't care about your thoughts that much anyways. And it was titled, here was the manifesto was titled Industrial Society and Its Future. I definitely am not reading that. That does not sound like a fun read. So basically what his manifesto talks about is he talks about in the beginning, actually, how the Industrial Revolution started to create a disastrous human race.
So just for the record, when you double space 35,000 words is 115 to 140 pages.
Yeah, and I'm not reading that. I'm
right.
not reading. I mean,
But
I will read 400-page books, but I read 400-page books of what I want to read.
Exactly.
I don't want to read something about industrial bullshit. I don't care. I'm not reading it. So basically, yes, he talks about how the Industrial Revolution, it started to ruin the human race. He talks about how technology is going to ruin us. He thinks it's going to lead to oppressive forms of human control, including genetic engineering. Listen, I'm not saying he wasn't right, though.
No, he wasn't far off to what he was saying.
I'm not saying that he should ever have killed or bombed people because of it. However, he clearly was a smart individual because some of the things that he talks about, I feel like technology has ruined a lot of the human race. I'd agree with that.
It has absolutely changed it for sure.
And we've got crazy amounts of biogenetic engineering in our food. And yeah, I can see where he was coming from. He also talks a lot about politics. And honestly, it's a whole lot of stuff that was written. And obviously, I'm not going to read it on here because that would take way fucking too long. So I just kind of summing it up. It's kind of it was his way to share with the public what he hated. Now, nowhere in his manifesto, I don't believe anyways, in his manifesto did he talk about bombing people. But I didn't read it. But it was very political. but it was very that he was upset about how the world was turning out. And he blamed a lot of it on modernization, right? Which I understand because, again, he came from, like, he's a wildlife guy, right? I find it very interesting, especially because the times we're living in today, that this is, I want people to hear very clearly. Because I'm part of social media and I see a lot of people are like, oh my God, our world, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But this shit was going on in the fucking 90s as well. 95 to be exact. He was already talking about the shit that you still hear people talking about today was being talked about in 95. Nothing changes. But he brought it up. It's been brought up a million times. And the politics part was just as fucking tumultuous and fucked up back then as it is today. He had his views on certain political standings and he had his views on certain ideals and they don't change. They're not changing. So they're all, it's like history just repeats itself. It's just one person versus like 20 or whatever, you know, because we got people who are very loud about how they feel about things. Those voices that are very loud, those are you're screaming the same shit that's been screamed for the last 40 years, but people just, nothing changes because they don't care. Now, there were questions on whether the manifesto should be published. So a bunch of the people who had received it, the news agencies and stuff, they went to the police and the FBI. So obviously his manifesto struck a chord and they were like, do we publish this? And they were at first kind of like, I don't think we should, because also they didn't know who wrote it. So you got to remember, he wrote this manifesto, sent it out anonymously. So nobody knew it was him writing it, right? So that makes me actually believe now that maybe he does talk about the bombings. Maybe he takes credit for them or something in the writing, because why would you not publish it? They were nervous about it. They didn't know who it was and they didn't know if they wanted to do it. But they did actually have the Washington Post published it in September of 1995. So they did one. Now, I don't know if the Washington Post talked to anybody or if they just went ahead and did it. My guess is they probably just went ahead and did it because that's what news people do. They just do whatever they fucking want to. So I'm thinking they just posted it without thinking of the ramifications that it could have. But thankfully they did. Because after the publication, there were thousands of tips that came in to the hotline. And Ted's brother, David, started to have some suspicions that his brother Ted might be the Unabomber. And part of the reason he feels like this is because his wife comes to him and says, this kind of sounds like something that your brother wrote. And so he starts to compare on his own time the earlier writings from Ted, because when Ted was younger, like in college and stuff, he would write letters, or even when he lived in his Montana, not a shack, it looked like a shack, but his Montana cabin, he would send letters back and forth to like his family, and he would complain about the world and the politics. And so they started comparing those. And then they hired a private investigator to see if they believed that these were connected. Now, the reason they were doing this is because honestly, they didn't want the FBI involved, because what they were worried about is they wanted to keep the FBI away from Ted, because they were worried that really about his safety, about how they would bring him in. It wasn't that they weren't trying to hide him, right? What they were trying to do was get this private investigator to show that it was Ted and then bring it to like a prosecuting attorney or like an attorney general, and then have them just like bring police to come arrest him type situation to keep him safe, because this is also coming off of Waco. So in Waco, it was pretty, I don't know how to explain it. Waco was pretty fucking terrible, right? So they were worried that the FBI would show up and they'd have a fucking like all out brawl, shootout, just like Waco. And in Waco, I don't know all the ins and outs of Waco, but I do know that people died in Waco because it was like a standoff, and they were worried that that was going to happen with the FBI.
And he's dealing with bombs.
And he's dealing with bombs.
So that's probably weighed on
yeah,
it too.
so they're kind of like, so his family wasn't like, oh, let's hide him from the world. They were kind of like, how can we have them look into Ted without alerting the FBI. And then if we know it's Ted, how can we get Ted down like here and into the hands of authorities without that kind of a situation? So in 1996, the early writings of Ted were given to the FBI for comparison. So somebody, not the person that was the private investigator, but I think the private investigator actually linked up with somebody. And then they basically said, oh no, there's like a 60, I'm telling you right now, there's like a 60% chance these are written by the same person. You need to bring this to the FBI. So they do. They give it to the FBI, and it is determined by the FBI that there are a lot of similarities between his earlier writing and this manifesto. They end up applying for a search warrant for Ted Kaczynski's home based off of the similarities and the fact that they've been looking for this Unabomber. David ends up being identified as a person who supplied the writings. So he thought, they won't know who I am. I'm not worried about it. Well, it's the fucking FBI. So they find out it's David, and they go to David, his wife, and his mom, I believe, and they interview all of them, and they investigate them, and they actually talk to David, and he is able to produce even more of Ted's writings. Specifically, he is able to give them letters with stamp times and stamp dates and locations of where Ted was writing letters to his family from. And they would add those to their timeline of where Ted would have been versus the bombs, which is also important. Now, the FBI, they were able to link all this together. And so now they're really like, okay, we get that search warrant. We're going to go search his home. But David is kind of concerned because he's like, but this is my brother. And I really don't want him to know that I am the reason he's getting investigated. And so the FBI tells him like, no, you know what? You will be anonymous. We will tell him that it was an anonymous person. He won't know it's you. And he will not know that you were involved. And he said, okay.
They're like, it was anonymously your brother.
No. Now, in April of 1996, David's identity is leaked on CBS News. And they were never able to actually find out who leaked his name. All they know is that Dan Rather, who is the CBS guy who leaked his name, supposedly got in contact with somebody at the FBI, and they told him the name of David and said that, oh no, we're in the process of getting a search warrant for Ted Kaczynski because his brother, David Kaczynski, was able to give us a bunch of writing samples that shows that it's pretty much him. And Dan Rather went on and said that to the public. This is why I don't like news people, because you should never have said that, Dan Rather. He's not even on the news anymore. But that's why I said earlier, Washington Post probably did whatever the fuck they wanted to, because the media likes to do those things. And sometimes they don't think about the ramifications of what you're doing. So this puts the FBI in a scramble because they don't have that search warrant yet. And now it's made public that Ted Kaczynski is the one that they're looking for. However, thank the Lord, Ted Kaczynski doesn't have electricity where he's at. So most likely he doesn't know yet. And so the FBI does actually get their search warrant rather quickly. And on April 3rd, 1996, the FBI arrests Ted Kaczynski in his Montana cabin. And they search his cabin and they find a cache of bomb components, 40,000 pages of handwritten journaling. 40,000 pages.
Yeah, not words, pages.
Pages of handwritten journals. But these are things that included bomb making experiments, descriptions of the crimes that he had done, how he did them, when he did them. Like, so you figure 40,000 pages, he probably started writing that shit in 1978. That's actually not unrealistic if you're writing about that shit all the time. They also found improvised firearms. They did find one live bomb. And they also found what they believed was the original of his manifesto. So in June of 1996, a grand jury indicts Ted on 10 counts of illegally transporting, mailing, and using bombs, that just cracks me up because I'm like, illegally transporting, mailing, and using. Couldn't you just say like for bombing? Like, is it legal to bomb?
No, but I think they were trying to get as much as they could, so they split it up.
Maybe. Now, his defense attorneys did try to enter an insanity plea to avoid the death penalty. However, Ted said, no, the fuck you're not. He said, I'm not crazy. I don't have an issue. No. Listen, I respect that. I don't necessarily respect Ted Kaczynski, but I respect that because he knew, because what do I say all the time? I want accountability, right? I want criminals. I don't give a shit what you did.
He owned up to it.
I want you to own up to what you did. And if you can stare me dead in the face and tell me I would not go back and do anything different, okay, well then that just means either you're a shitty person, or in his case, he fucking believed in his cause. Right or wrong, he believed in his cause. But all I ever want is accountability. He gave it. He's like, well, I'm not crazy. I fucking believe that the world is going to shit. I don't know why he wanted to kill college students and planes for that or whatever, but I'm not really quite sure on that. Maybe if I read the manifesto, it'd make more sense to me. But now on January 8th, 1998, Ted asks if he can dismiss his lawyers and hire somebody else. And he wants to hire this other man who said, no, I won't go for the insanity plea. Instead, I'm going to go on the fact that you're standing by what you're saying. Like, I'm going to go on more of that. Well, this is denied. And so then the next day, Ted tries to commit suicide. Now, as there is a psychiatrist who did end up seeing him, and they supposedly diagnosed him as suffering from paranoid schizophrenia. However, many, many, many people, including other psychiatrists who had seen him, said, that's a crock of shit. This paranoid schizophrenia stuff, that doesn't make sense. A couple of them said he's not schizophrenic, he has schizoid disorder. Now, on January 21st, 1998, he is deemed competent to stand trial, and the prosecutors bring out the death penalty. And they're like, okay, well, you can stand trial, and now we're going to charge you for the 10 counts, and we're asking for the death penalty. Then on January 22nd, so the next day, 1998, Ted pleads guilty to all of the charges, and he is given life in prison without parole. So he pled guilty in exchange for no death penalty. Ted was put into ADX Florence, which is a supermax prison in Colorado. And he did later try to withdraw his plea because he said that his plea was coerced, and it was denied. Then in 2006, it was ruled that the items that were in Ted's cabin should be sold. And then, they're talking about anything that wasn't like specifically bomb making parts, but they basically said, sell everything you can in his cabin. Then the net proceeds of those, they will go towards restitution for his victims. They were able to net about $15 million. And I'll be honest with you, that was smart as fuck. I think they should do that a lot. I think that they should take the people who kill, serial killers in particular. If you take the items that they have and you sell them and then you split that money between their victims, that's fucking genius. Now, he obviously has more live victims than he does dead victims. So he doesn't have as many family members. So I'm assuming when they say restitution, they're talking about the victims who lived. I don't know if the families of the victims the men who died, or the people who died, I don't know if they got restitution, but I still think it's a good idea. Then in March 2021, he is diagnosed with rectal cancer. And on December 14th, 2021, he is transferred to the Federal Medical Center in North Carolina, where he begins to receive biweekly chemo treatments for 2 years. That's crazy. And I could not imagine getting chemo in prison. It's already uncomfortable, and then you got to go back.
For 2 years.
For 2 years. Now, on March 2023, his health has declined to where they basically are like, listen, I don't think there's much. He also has been diagnosed as being depressed, and there's all these things. And on June 10th, 2023, he is found in his cell unresponsive. He has no pulse, and this was found after he had hanged himself from a handicap rail with a shoelace. And he was brought to Duke University Hospital because he did have a pulse, but they did CPR. They did get his breathing back, but his pulse was extremely fucking weak, and his blood pressure was so low that he was pronounced dead at 8:07 a.m. while at the Duke University Hospital. He was 81.
Damn, it's just crazy to think that, 81-year-old, you're hanging yourself like...
I know, but you know what though? Think about it. His father shot himself after he was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. And for him, he had gone through 2 years of chemo. He didn't have a good prognosis anyways. Maybe for him, that was the other part. It's like, I can't fucking do this anymore. I mean, This is why physician-assisted suicide is becoming more popular, because cancer, depending on the cancer, can be fucking detrimental and can be so excruciatingly painful. And if you're in prison trying to deal with that, like, I mean, that's an awful way to go regardless. And no, I do not think that Ted Kaczynski was like this great person. I'm not trying to put him up on a pedestal, but I am separating the way I feel about him versus other serial killers. And I think part of it is because I don't view him as a serial killer, but also because it sounds so fucked up. But like I said, he owned up to it. He didn't apologize. But he owned up to it, and he basically said, like, listen, I fucking stand firm on this shit. He's like, no, this is me. This is what I did.
Well, I think part of it, too, is if somebody were to die at each one of the bombings that he did, I think maybe that's why they classify him as a serial, because that would have been a lot of people.
They classify him as a serial killer because he killed 3 different people. So the definition is 2 or more people with a cooling off period.
Right. There would have been a lot more if the bombs would have done what he wanted them to do.
Right, but do you know what?
He wasn't going for pain, he was going for death.
But I don't know. That's what I'm saying, though. I don't know. And that's what I'm struggling with, because a lot of the bombs, when they detonated, they would give burns and cuts. Burns and cuts on people who were right there.
Maybe in his manifesto, he talks about it.
The people who got them out of their mailboxes and had them blow up in their hands did not die. Now, they had horrific injuries, but in my brain, I'm trying to figure out, like, was he trying to kill people, or was he just trying to scare the shit out of people, or was he trying to cause a ruckus and he killed 3 people while doing it? I don't know. I genuinely don't know, but regardless, it's not okay. You can't fucking send bombs to people. Yeah, you're probably right. If I were to read the manifesto, it probably would answer all my questions, but I'll be honest with you, I'm not interested in the manifesto. And I think the reason I'm not interested, if I'm being 100% real, and I think I let all of our listeners down, but this is why, because the world that we live in right now is so politically fucked up. I actually don't have the patience or the heart to sit here and read anything like that. So that's actually the reason I didn't want to read it. It's not for any other reason. I am so drained from our current society. I'm not even going to say, I'm going to say our society. I am so drained from our current society and the hatred that I see on a daily basis. I can't wrap my brain around the hatred that I see. And I'm somebody political wise, I am very much not affiliated with either political party, because I think they're both fucked up. So I sit there and I didn't want to read his manifesto because I'm like, I'm already depressed with our goddamn world the way that it is, that if I read his manifesto, I was afraid that I'd read it and be like, well, he makes so much fucking sense right now. That would just not be happy. That would not make me happy. So I decided to just not read it.
That would not make me happy.
Because I don't know.
I go down into my garage and you're like, hey, do you got a pair of wire snips?
I definitely would not be creating bombs. So I want to make that clear. And then I also want to make clear that, like, do I think that Ted Kaczynski should have been in jail? Yes, I do. Do I think Ted Kaczynski should have spent his life in jail? Yes, I do. Do I think Ted Kaczynski was a bad person? I can't answer that question correctly. I can't say, see, this is why he's different than most serial killers. Because most serial killers, I could say either, oh, he was born shitty or he was created shitty. In this scenario, I'm going to say he was created shitty.
But that still makes him a bad person.
Because he bombed people, I'd have to classify him as a bad person.
He was a bad person.
However, there's always those few people who are not bad people. They just make bad choices. And so it's like, does he fall in the bad choices category? I don't fucking know.
Not over 18 years.
I mean, true story.
That's a lot of bad choices.
That's true.
So
Jay's over here talking me down off the fucking, I'm about ready to side with fucking Ted Kaczynski on our goddamn world because of the world we live in right now.
If it was one, maybe I could say you made a fucking bad choice, but you made choices over 18 years, 16 of them. So no.
Yeah,
you're a bad person.
So he's a bad person. So I want to make it clear that no, I'm not trying to stand up for him. He's just so different than all the other serial killers that I've done. Like, I can hate most of the other serial killers because they do really, really, not that he didn't do terrible things. I already know people are going to hate us after this episode. I already know it. Sorry. He did do terrible things, but his terrible things just don't seem to be as terrible as people as much as like Albert fucking Fish, right? Like who I hate and despise with every part of my body. Like it's still bad, but it's not nearly as bad. And he's kind of interesting to talk about. Speaking of, do you want to hear the shots?
That's why I sit through this.
So Ted has said that after he skipped the 6th grade, that he no longer felt that he could connect with his peers, which I actually totally agree with. Because you have to remember, prior to the 6th grade, he was in the same level as the rest of the people. He was smarter than them, but social-wise, he had maturity-wise the same things in common. That is not necessarily unheard of. And that is also not a reason to bomb people. But what I mean is, if I was told that one of my children was extremely smart, and they would say to me like, hey, you should have them skip this grade, I'd be like, no, thank you. I personally would say no, thank you. Because I actually went to school with somebody when I was in middle school she was the age of a 5th grader, and she was in 7th grade classes. So she skipped 2 grades. And let me tell you, that was not a socially good experiment for her. She was way too young to be with all of us, first of all. And second of all, she doesn't have the same wants, needs. She doesn't want to do the same things that we did. And middle school, that's like the worst fucking time of your life. And when you're even younger than the people that are supposed to be your peers, they're bullies. They're mean. So I actually agree with that. And I think that might that has a lot to do with other things. But he himself actually said that he would never say that that's the reason he grew up to hate the world, just so you know. Now, during the 1980s and the 1990s, some of Ted's neighbors had suspected that he had been poisoning their dogs and had attacked them on multiple occasions. The police did find the poisons in his home after they searched his home. And he also does actually end up admitting to killing at least one of the dogs. So yes, he's a bad person, because I definitely care more about dogs than I do people.
Yep.
Now, the bombing devices that were used they varied widely. However, many of them contained initials FC. So they were able to connect them because they would find these bombs and they would see that pieces inside of them would have the FC initials. Now, Ted later comes out and tells people that these stood for Freedom Club. He also has admitted that he was very careful when he was creating the bombs as to not leave fingerprints at all on them. However, some of the devices did have fingerprints on them, and when they checked the fingerprints, they did not match Ted Kaczynski's. So I don't know whose fingerprints were on, probably people who sold in the parts or something, but they were not his. His fingerprints were not on any of the bombs. He also did everything very strategic, like as in purposely leaving misleading clues so it would throw off the investigations. So you're right. He was just a genius, but he was an evil genius. That's what he was. Now, after Ted went to the Supermax prison, he actually becomes friends with 2 people in this Supermax prison that they hang out together.
And I'm guessing they are also really bad people.
Well, their names are Ramsey Youssef and Timothy McVeigh. So
yep.
Ramsey Youssef is actually responsible for the 1993 World Trade Center bombings. And Timothy McVeigh is responsible for the 1995 Oklahoma City bombing. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, my biggest motherfucking pet peeve is when you put people in jail that have the same crimes and you allow them to be friends. I don't understand.
That doesn't make sense to me.
You don't let 3 fucking bombers
together
hang out, like especially in a Supermax. They aren't even supposed to really be talking to each other. They're supposed to be chained up all the time. They don't get any freedom. So how the fuck he became friends with them, I don't know. But he was friends with them and actually talked to them until Timothy McVeigh was put to death. Like they actually had like a friendship. In 2012, Ted actually he had sent a response to the Harvard Alumni Association directory. They had been asking if, people from the 1962 or whatever class, they were attending their 50th reunion. So I don't think he actually got
virtually.
He didn't get an invite, but guess 2012, you're right. It probably could have been virtual. So he actually sends them a response for whether he's going to, who he is, what's he going to do. Now, he listed his occupation as prisoner. And below that, you could say what awards you've had. And he actually said that he has 8 awards. They're life sentences. He's not only
Facts.
smart, he had jokes.
Yeah.
That's not even funny at all. But I mean, he did that. And I'm like, what? For what reason? Now, here's something interesting. Ted's cabin, the one that I had been talking about this whole time, it can actually be found at the FBI Experience in Washington, D.C. Someday we should go there. I didn't know this is a thing.
Let's
It's in like
do
a
it.
museum. They actually had removed the cabin, brought it to the FBI, recreated it. I watched a whole recreation video of it, recreated it, rebuilt it, and then moved it to the FBI Experience. And you can actually go there and see the cabin that he lived in while he was doing the bombings.
It's probably little.
It is. It's really little. That's why I said it looks like a shack. It's really little. And then finally, here is a quote from Ted Kaczynski himself. He wrote this. He said, "I often had fantasies of killing the kind of people I hated, i.e., government officials, police, computer scientists, the rowdy type of college students who left their beer cans in the arboretum." What the fuck's an arboretum?
Well, that's why he targeted
College students.
college students.
Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's what he wrote. Now, my thing is this. I understand, but out of all those people, he legit only went after the college students. He didn't ever bomb a government building. He didn't bomb a police station. Computer scientists, maybe the 2 computer shops, maybe is what he's going for. But the college students, the rowdy type of college students, because it was pretty much all college students and an airplane, which again, doesn't have anything to do with the other people. But I mean, so when you hear that, I guess you could say Ted Kaczynski was a bad person.
Yep. Glad you came around to it.
So anyways, that's the story of Ted Kaczynski, Theodore Kaczynski, the Unabomber.
Old Teddy.
So if you like the things that you hear, if you like hearing about serial killers that in my personal opinion may not actually be classified as a serial killer, but technically are.
And if you like hearing me bringing her back to reality and not be a follower.
I'm not a follower.
Well,
What are you talking about?
you were like, oh, Ted.
No. That'd be Manson. That's no. If you like those things, then make sure you're following us. And if you're listening to us for like the 100th time, then that means you are following us. And thank you. We appreciate you. And also, I have to give a really quick shout out. And I know this already is probably way too long of an episode. I don't know what happened Monday, but we've had the highest downloads ever in one day on
Boom.
Monday. And it was crazy. So thank you. And if you liked it and you're new to us, because clearly some people are new, then just make sure you're following us. And if you think there's anybody out there that you might like to hear us as well, then share us with them. And we'll continue to do what we do, and you continue to do what you do, which is to sit there and listen to us while you're doing like nothing or cooking or commuting or sleeping or whatever it is that you're doing while you're listening to this.
Yep.
Other than that, I just want to say one more time, thank you very much from the bottom of my heart for listening to me tell you the story about Theodore Kaczynski, the Unabomber. Until next week, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Remember to lock your doors and bar your windows. Until next time.